Hey everyone, what's up? It's Dr. Charlie here. And in today's video, I want to answer a question I get all the time. And it's basically a question of, hey, like I'm in pain. And so should I just rest and let this thing heal? My specialty, for those of you who don't know me, is helping people with unresolved back, butt, and sciatica problems. So that's kind of what we'll talk about today. But at the end of the day, the same principles can apply to basically any type of pain anywhere in the body, or really any type of thing you're trying to overcome just in life. All right. So many times, right, you go to, say, a specialist or go to see someone and you're in pain, and, the doctor, if you will, your family doctor, or even specialist might say, hey, well, take some of these pills, just rest for a few weeks. And if it comes back, or if it doesn't go away, then, stop back on it, check back in, right? But that's actually a really bad recommendation. And so I wanted to do a deep dive into this conversation of, hey, should you be resting or should you not? Because as you'll learn, there's a delicate balance between resting and then resting too much. If you rest too much, you end up avoiding things, and that causes all kinds of problems. But if you don't rest enough, then maybe you don't allow the things to heal. So we're going to talk about that today in this video. If this is a topic you're interested in and you have a literal pain in the butt, then I answer a whole bunch of other questions that you might be having also inside of my channel and my content. So go ahead, hit the subscribe button, as well as like the video, and be sure to watch the end and comment below with any questions you might have. And finally, before we get into the video, just recognize that the purpose of this video is not to help you figure out if you have Piriformis Syndrome or a back problem or an SI joint problem or whatever other problem you think might be going on. That's not the intent of this video, but I've spent a ton of time putting together a free resource for you. It is a DIY diagnostic guide. And this guide, just to show you here really quickly, is just a summary of all my thoughts, essentially my algorithms. It lets you inside my brain so you can see exactly how I make decisions about what could be going on with your back, butt, and your leg. So check that out. Again, you can download that for free here. All right, so let's get right into it. Maybe you've asked yourself, hey, perhaps I should just rest and let my body heal. Maybe that's the answer, right? Or maybe you've, again, gone to see a family physician or somebody else who's told you, hey, just take some time off from whatever it is that's bothering you and see what happens. And while that's not a terrible recommendation, maybe let's talk about what that means for you and if that's good advice and how to know what you should do or what you should not do. So look, it's a good thought at the end of the day, and it kind of makes sense, right? But here are some things to consider. So let's start by breaking down this question further, right? Maybe I should rest and let things heal. It's kind of two parts to that question, right? So you've got the maybe I should rest part, and then you've got the and let things heal part of the question, right? So the reason we need to break this question down is to get to the real root of the question. So why rest? And at the core, what is rest, and sort of what does it mean to heal your body? And do we even need to do that to have no pain, which is probably what you want if you're watching this? So let's talk about rest first. So rest can be defined as some form of avoidance. I want to make this real for you, because resting isn't just you laying on the couch per se, right? Resting is a form of avoidance. And so what is avoidance? Well, avoidance is anything you do to try and prevent the onset of pain or escape from your pain experience. And there's sort of a spectrum of avoidance, if you will, right? So you have sort of a subtle avoidance behavior, which would be like, hey, I use this cushion to try to pad my behind when I sit on the chair because it hurts and I don't like doing that. Maybe you move your body in certain ways to kind of work around the pain or prevent the pain from coming on. Or maybe you take like a really hard, 0 to 100 all or none approach of like, okay, if running hurts or if sitting hurts or whatever, I'm just going to avoid it completely. So you just shut things down and go complete avoidance. So within the context of pain, rest is a form of avoidance used to prevent the onset of pain. Let's just be clear with that. So from here on out, let's redefine rest as avoidance. And you'll see why this is important, redefining this. So I just want to call out the elephant in the room, because this is something a lot of times, especially if you're in pain, right? And you've tried lots of different things, and you're not getting to where you want to go, and you already feel like, hey man, nobody understands what I'm dealing with, and I feel very alone. People in pain often feel very guilty for using this term of avoidance, right? Because it might make it sound like, or might make you feel like you're chickening out or running from your problem. So you have to understand that avoidance behaviors are actually an effective and very necessary part of overcoming your pain. But it has to be used, and they have to be used at the right time. So timing is very important, and we're going to help you understand when you should rest versus when you shouldn't. So the opposite of avoidance is exposure. Avoidance versus exposure, white versus black, or black versus white. So avoidance, again, can be defined as anything you do to try and avoid triggering or escape from your pain. And exposure is anything you do to confront your pain. or challenge it. So eliminating pain is an art and requires a delicate dance between avoidance and exposure. Because when you're dealing with pain and trying to live your life, one of two things can happen. You can either have a setback, so there's your activity. You're going up to it and you're doing this thing. You can either have a setback, notice it's in red, not a very good experience, or a safe corrective experience. And this is how we could kind of define it. So a setback, or maybe you call it a flare-up, right? Is something where you do the activity and you say, wow, that hurt. That was brutal. That was a bad idea. And let's not do that again, right? And so this is sort of perceived to be a threat or dangerous to your system. But if you have a safe corrective experience, you say things after engaging in an activity or exposing yourself to an activity like, hey, wow, I'm okay. Like that wasn't too bad, or that went better than I thought. Notice one is kind of threatening and dangerous, like that hurt, that was brutal, that was a bad idea, versus no, that was okay, I'm good. That's safe. And the whole idea behind getting out of pain is shifting your body and your brain from danger mode or threat mode to safety mode. So how do you know when you should avoid or expose yourself to pain in a way that helps you overcome it while also minimizing the chance of setbacks? So there's something I like to kind of bring up, an analogy I like to use to help people in pain understand when they should avoid things or when they shouldn't, okay? And it's this idea of like red light, yellow light, green light, and using these stoplight rules, if you will. So red light, this is when you have moderate to high pain. The more you do it, the worse it gets, things like that. Then this is a signal of danger to your system. And you should be resting or avoiding, to some extent, this activity. So when pain is high, it's almost impossible to have a safe experience with your pain. In this case, you want to engage in avoidance behaviors. If you need to stand up, right, if sitting's bad, then stand up. If you need to lay down because walking or being on your feet is bad, then please lay down. Do whatever you need to find comfort. Do not, I repeat, do not push through your pain. This is not a no pain, no gain thing, right? This will cause a setback, I guarantee it. And in addition to engaging in avoidance behaviors, send yourself messages of safety. This too shall pass. This is temporary. I'll get over this. This sucks now, but I'll be all right. So send these messages with a sense of compassion and calmness. The goal is to calm your system down. Or something else you could do, right, is find safety. Avoid that activity. Get out of the fire zone, if you will. Okay, get out of the fire and kind of attend to what you're feeling and maybe lean into some other positive sensation, something that does feel good. So if your butt cheek's on fire and you've just stood up to kind of get away from sitting because that's really a problem, then maybe you put your hand on your belly or put your hand on your chest and you just kind of sense what it feels like to breathe and to breathe calmly and or deeply, right? And there's no right or wrong way to do this. You're just trying to kind of tune into something that does feel good. Maybe it's the sunshine coming through the window. Maybe it's the breeze. Maybe it's a smell, some other positive sensation, right? While sending yourself messages of safety. So that's when you would use avoidance behaviors. Yellow light, this is when you have mild to moderate pain, all right? So this is, for example, when you're doing something, you feel it, but then when you stop it, it pretty much immediately goes away. And then when you do it, you feel it a little bit, it's mild to moderate, but then when you let off of that activity or when you stop participating in an activity, then it calms down. This is yellow light, right? And for the most part, you're fairly safe. The chance of you're doing any type of damage here or sending signals of threat or danger to your system is very low. So this is when you can take a graded exposure approach. So when pain is mild to moderate, notice I didn't say pain-free. I'll talk about this more. This is an opportunity for exposure by briefly engaging in an activity you love. In this case, the goal of confronting your pain is to reinforce that you are in fact safe and your pain isn't dangerous. That's it. You want to feel good and say to yourself after engaging in this activity, how do you know that you had a safe, corrective experience, a good experience that's going to move you closer to healing? When you start to say to yourself, hey, like that wasn't too bad. I just did that. Great. I could do that again. And the final light, green light, right? So when you have no pain, you're not exposing yourself to anything, good nor bad, right? You're just engaging in these situations and you're perfectly fine to do so. There's a complete sense of safety. And you're allowed to have full exposure, full sun, right, to this activity. So in this case, look, you're not having like a corrective experience per se, because there is no pain, but there's also very little risk of a setback. So you're good to go. You definitely don't need to avoid these types of things when you're sort of in that green light scenario, if you run it through this filter. So again, this is the filter. So when you're engaging in something, you're wondering, should I avoid this or should I not? Ask yourself, is this red light, yellow light, green light? Red light, moderate to high pain when you're doing something, it's getting worse, right? Later, it's like, ugh. right? Yeah, that's danger. You can't push through that. Avoidance behaviors, absolutely at this point. And remember, you're not chickening out or running from something. You're just avoiding it because symptoms are too high and you're causing yourself a setback. You're reinforcing that thing, that activity or whatever it is as dangerous. Yellow light, mild to moderate symptoms, you're safe and you can gradually and slowly begin building up and moving into that. And green light, if there's no pain, then you're fully safe and go ahead and do it. So there's this delicate balance, right? So on one end, when symptoms are really high, you can see that sort of where the red arrow, right? The tolerance for activity is probably fairly low because you hurt really bad, right? And this is when you want to start to do what I call shift pain triggers. Basically, what things are triggering your symptoms. Let's find creative outside the box ways to, number one, identify what they are. And then number two, find new ways to do them so they're not as yucky. They're not as triggering to your symptoms. So we want to do motions that feel good. And we want to find positions and ways to move our body and position our body throughout the day that also feel good. But you'll notice that as symptoms begin to calm down, as indicated by that red squiggly line going down, down, down over time, right? The blue line, your function or your tolerance for living life or doing things actually goes up, right? So as the level of pain or threat goes down, again, there's higher functional tolerance and or tolerance for activity. And there's sort of this chasm, if you will, of jumping from one side where symptoms are too high to where you kind of have to use avoidance behaviors because it's in that red light, if you will. Maybe it's like an orange light, somewhere between red and yellow light. And then as things move into yellow light, things start to simmer down a little bit and obviously closer to green light, then you need to start progressing yourself. You need to start actually doing those things which you perceive to be dangerous or that initially caused your problem in order to get back to living life and become fully functional again. So hopefully that makes sense. So now let's take this a step further so we can clear up any confusion around using rest to heal, right? And I want to help you also avoid a critical mistake, so stick around for that. So remember back to this slide. We broke this question. It's kind of a twofold question, right? Maybe I should rest and let things heal. Well, we talked about maybe you should rest and kind of that red light, yellow light, green light filter for you to use to determine should you or should you not. But now let's talk about this idea of like, and let things heal, this idea and concept behind healing. So does resting really help your body heal? So there's an assumption here that needs to be cleared up, at least from like a super high level. And so when people ask me this question of, should I rest so that I can heal? It assumes two things. Number one, that healing is what they want, when what they really want is just for their pain to go away. And therefore the assumption is that healing is required for pain relief. So in order to heal something, there must be something fundamentally broken or damaged about that thing or that body part, in this case, something in the back, butt, hip, or leg or something like that, right? Or something else in that area. There's something wrong with it. And healing could loosely be defined as fixing or repairing something in the body, right, that's damaged via various bodily processes. And so this whole idea of healing is based off the understanding that bodily damage equals pain. And then in order to relieve pain, this structural damage, this thing that's wrong, needs to be somehow repaired or healed. Deep stuff, right? But is this true? Maybe or maybe not. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So what do I mean? So let's rephrase the question so it more accurately reflects what we're looking for and what we should really be asking. So instead of asking, should I rest and let my body heal, which assumes that the lack of healing or presence of structural damage is the reason for your pain, let's ask it like this. Will avoidance strategies allow me to become pain-free? Remember, we redefined rest as avoidance, and we redefined this concept that you maybe don't actually need to be healed. Instead, do you really care about healing or do you just want to be pain-free? Right? So let's challenge these notions. So if you don't know this yet, you probably should. Pain can be experienced in the presence of or in the absence of structural problems. So you can feel pain with or without tissue damage, structural damage, meaning nothing has to be wrong per se. It can be wrong, but nothing has to be wrong per se for you to experience this sensation of pain. So remember, your pain experience is sort of this dynamic interplay between your body and your brain. And so you can have bodily problems, right? Structural problems or something that's damaged or broken or torn or whatever. But you can also have pain that is of non-structural origin, where there's actually no tissue damage present. In fact, it's just something that you've learned. It's become familiar to you and your brain. So think about it. If you've recently injured yourself lifting, bending, twisting, running, doing whatever within the past 6 months, chances there is some real structural injury or damage that was done which needs repair. So we call this an acute injury, one that happened not too long ago with a clear injury that occurred, and there's high level of pain and discomfort. I'll give you an example in a minute. So in this case, red light rules apply, and avoidance strategies may be the only thing you can do. They're probably going to be your best friend because things are probably really painful. And if you've ever had an acute injury, right, you hit your finger with a hammer, or like you bend over, pick something up and hurt your back, right? Things can be really painful, and therefore the only thing you might be able to tolerate is not that much. And so you might need to be mostly resting. So when you've just injured yourself and or when pain is high, some degree of rest is usually necessary and totally part of the plan to allow your body to heal and repair the damage that just occurred, right? Think that makes sense? Now, here's the cool thing though, is that structural problems, most of them heal naturally. So with time and the right environment / conditions, the body just is really good at healing itself. To give you an idea, right, of time frame wise, if you've just hurt yourself, right, you've just hurt your muscle. And by the way, like if you go to the gym and you lift heavy weights, you're actually kind of damaging your muscle tissue. So that says exercise-induced damage, right, to the muscle tissue might last for like a few days. And you probably experience this. You go do squats the next day, you can't walk around or sit on the toilet for, a few days, right? But then it gets better over time. And here's the thing, even though it hurts, we're not threatened by it because we know that it'll go away. Most things that are structural go away. So if you have different types of grade sprains or tears or things like that, right, to the muscle, you can see that things go maybe up to 6 months of healing time. If you have a tendon problem, again, maybe 6 months. If you have a ligament issue, maybe 6 to 12 months. In this case, very, very rare, you have a grade 3, and so on and so forth. The bone even takes, just 2 to 3 months. And a study analyzed the records of essentially like 277,000, lots and lots of people with basically low back disc herniation, some type of disc issues in their spine. And of these, 97% of them were successfully managed without surgery. 3% failed this sort of natural treatment and needed spine surgery. So most things heal. Even if you have a nasty disc herniation, what's interesting is that people agree that cuts will heal and bruises will heal and everything else heals in the body, right? But then when there's something inside of us that we can't see, for some reason, the body like just forgets about it and says, oh no, I heal everything else, but I'm not going to heal you. No, disc can heal too, and so can other issues. In fact, most of the time, 97% of the time, they heal naturally, right? So most studies show that the majority of people who say disc herniations or other issues in around this back, butt, leg area will recover within 3 to 6 months. So if you notice, most of the things that I talked about, structural issues, tears, and sprains and strains and all this stuff, right? Disc herniation, 6 months is kind of like the top end for most of these things. And here's an example of a guy named Ivan inside my program, right? And this is just an example of something that kind of sounds and, is actually consistent with a structural problem. So I want to kind of give you the vibe of what structural problems sound like. So he says, hey, my sciatica recap. He had basically bad back, butt, and leg stuff. I think my issue is structural, right? So he had this MRI and it showed a nasty looking disc herniations, a sequestered or a sequestrated disc, pretty bad. Here's his timeline. Pain started around the 1st of February. Now it's the 1st of May. So exactly 3 months later, remember I said most disc issues heal within 3 to 6 months, right? He has no pain within 3 months. Worst pain was 3 days in mid-February. Listen to kind of how he describes it. I couldn't walk at all. And I had a feeling that painkillers don't even help at all either. Even painkillers, the strongest painkillers, couldn't do anything. Excruciating pain. Then he entered the program. And he also says this is another sign that pain might be structural, right? Not only do you know what happened, it started recently, right? And you're still in that acute kind of ticked off phase, but emotions were high during the time. Most of the time you feel about down. It's just the way it is. I'm a human with my emotions just laying in bed all day, right? Not being able to do anything, left him sort of in this depressed state. This is characteristic, especially with like a bad back injury. So Ivan was initially stuck in the acute inflammatory process caused by a nasty disc herniation. So avoidance and or rest strategies to help him find comfort, coupled with, kind of yummy feel-good motions and mindfulness-based strategies so that he could get over those kind of roller coaster emotions that would occur during that time frame, allowed him to calm his nervous system and heal as quickly as possible. This is a case where healing actually had to occur, and rest was useful in allowing that tissue to occur. We didn't do complete rest, we got the body moving in ways that were safe and non-threatening, kept him moving as much as possible, as well as keeping check and rein on his brain so that he didn't go down the rabbit hole of being fearful, worried, and concerned, because we knew that there was a timeline there and he would get better if he just stuck through it and followed a process. But realize that not all pain is caused by structural damage like it was in Ivan's. So kind of look to see how this sort of not only looks different, but it sort of smells different too. There's a different vibe to it. So I'm going to show you a case of a guy named Bill. So Bill is 60 years old. I'm going to point out a few things that point to his problem probably not being structural, meaning he doesn't have to worry about healing anything because there's no longer anything left to heal. Let me explain more in a moment. But look, he's had his pain for 5 years. Most things get better within 6 months. Kind of weird. It seemed, he's pulling at straws here. It seemed to develop after I started running again, after not running for a long time. So he's not even sure. Notice there's a little question mark there. This is what we'll want to do. We'll always want to link physical pain. We're biologically and evolutionary wired to link physical pain to a physical structural problem and sort of mechanism of onset. Even if Bill started running 4 weeks ago, he might still say, you know what? It must have been the running. I started running 4 weeks ago, and now I have my pain 4 weeks later, and that was the cause. Well, dude, if the problem was running, then it probably would have happened like right around the time that you started that, right? If you hit your finger with a hammer 4 weeks ago, and then your finger starts to hurt a month ago, like that doesn't make sense, right? So he's pulling at straws here. By the way, he took a microscope, an X-ray MRI, to his back and his butt and his leg and his hip and things like that, and they found nothing. He had seen multiple PAs and physicians and things like that, right? Because here's what happens. You've been in pain for a long time. You think to yourself, there's got to be something that they missed. So you get multiple X-rays, multiple MRIs, and you'll just keep going down that pathway because you don't understand this concept. And nobody can agree what's going on. This is kind of weird, right? A little bit different vibe than Ivan, who has a very clear mechanism for why he hurts, right? He did this thing. It started February 1st. You know, this is the way he's feeling. Boom, 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 boom. Things are very clear. Not so much with Bill. So look, Bill presents with chronic pain, generally anything more than like 4 to 6 months, okay, without clear signs of structural damage. So after 5 years, chances are extremely high that if, notice I said if, he said he thinks it was running, but we don't really know. He doesn't know. If there was a structural problem that initiated his pain, it would be more than healed by now. Notice nothing on that timeline of how the body heals lasted for more than 6 months or even 12 months, even at the worst case scenario. He's 5 years into it. So what in the body doesn't heal after 5 years? So it doesn't mean, by the way, that his pain is made up or not real. It simply means that nothing at this point is broken and he's fixing. Avoidance strategies will still be useful if pain is high. We'll talk about why. He should not push through his pain because all pain, structural or not, is real. But in Bill's case, the goal of treatment is not tissue healing. Instead, the goal is to teach him how to unlearn his pain experience and view the sensations he's experiencing through a lens of safety versus danger. Because after all, he is in fact safe and there's nothing to fix. Interesting. So what begins as initial injury or onset of pain, right, can quickly become something that becomes learned. So pain is simply a sensation. And after experiencing it for a while, generally 4 to 6 months is all it takes. You practice feeling pain for 4 to 6 months, and this is all it takes for some people, such that it becomes something your brain becomes used to. It becomes familiar, and things that are familiar feel safe. It feels like home. So even after the body is healed, pain can persist because your brain has had so much practice experiencing, sort of like riding a bike every day, right? The brain learns to experience pain and associate it with danger. So pain is a sensation plus fear or danger. So in Bill's case, in Ivan's case, yes, red light. In Bill's case, if Bill tries to wait out his pain, resting in order to allow his body to heal under the traditional notion that, hey, pain equals damage, he will be resting forever, another 5 years, another 10 years, as long as he wants to rest and avoid things. And avoiding stuff will actually further reinforce his pain and strengthen it. So why? Let me reiterate. For Bill, there is nothing to heal. This is a case where pain is being experienced without evidence of structural damage. Nobody can figure out what it is. X-rays and MRIs, the best tests out there, can't pick up anything. There's no consistency there in the pattern. And here's the real kicker. When you suffer from pain, avoidance behaviors can become a way of life. But avoidance behaviors taken too far can reinforce to your brain that what you're avoiding is dangerous. Right? So you start off living life being able to do all this stuff. Then you start to experience pain, and the doctor, right? You go to them and they say, hey, just rest for a few weeks, maybe a couple months, and just come back if it doesn't, right? And during that time, you're teaching yourself, oh, like this thing is threatening. I should avoid this. This thing is threatening. I should avoid this. You're maybe not consciously doing that, but subconsciously you're avoiding things which reinforces it as threatening. And maybe if you have a structural problem, great. But what happens, if you think about it, avoidance just shrinks your life. It shrinks your ability. Now you're not running anymore, you're just walking. And now you're not walking, I don't know, now you're just sitting and watching people walk, right? You're sitting on the sidelines. So avoidance has a way of sort of like squeezing us, right? And sort of limiting our life, boxing us in. So arrest or avoidance at the wrong stage of healing, timing issue, fuels pain with fear. This is important, and this makes sense too. So you don't avoid things you're not fearful, frustrated, or worried about. Right? So avoiding something continues to send messages to your brain that whatever you're avoiding is threatening. I don't avoid my wife because I like her. Right? But if I did avoid her, then it would probably, reinforce to her and to me that, hey, like there's something going on there. Something about her is a threat. So again, remember, pain is sensation plus fear and danger. Once you eliminate the fear and danger, if you've had something, you're stuck in chronic pain, then you just have pain as a sensation, right? And sensations are not inherently good or bad. There's context to it. And just as an example, to kind of like push this point or hit this point home, imagine, take the same sensation of like hotness and burning, right? If you just, I don't know, if you've been in pain for a while and you have this pain in your butt and your leg, right? You might describe it as like hot, burny, tingly, things like that. And that would be threatening. That would be dangerous. I think you all would agree if you had this. But isn't it interesting that same sensation in a different context is actually nice and feels good? So for example, if it's like maybe a cool fall evening out and you have like a hot tub on your deck, or maybe you're some Airbnb and there's like this big A-frame. I'm thinking this A-frame that's like in Ohio. It's on my brain right now, right? You go out on this deck and it's like beautiful. And like, I don't know, you have these frogs and all these insects and whatnot. And you jump into this jacuzzi that's like 98, 99, 100 degrees or whatever, the maximum temperature is allowed to be before it actually burns you. You're actually like, right? You might be sitting there, you might be drinking something. I don't drink, so I'd be drinking water, or maybe you're just like, you're with friends, right? But it's a positive experience. It's not threatening, but your skin is still kind of like burning. You still have a burny sensation. So how is it that jacuzzi is safe and threatening? Burning sensation. And you have the same maybe burning sensation somewhere else and it's threatening. Very interesting, right? So it's all related to the context. Remember, pain is just a sensation. What makes it threatening is that you have this fear and danger associated with it. All right. Cool. So how do we eliminate fear and reduce the overall sense of danger? So if you're afraid of heights, let's use this example. How do you overcome it? Because this is exactly how we overcome pain. So do you avoid heights? Think about it like this, right? So do you avoid heights? So like if you were to go to the height doctor, right? Not somebody like physically measures how tall you are, not like a checkup, okay? But like the doctor to help you get over this fear. I don't even know what that means. If anybody knows what the height doctor is called, somebody helps you get over these fear of different things, and we'll just say you have a fear of heights, right? If they just said to you, hey, like you're gonna be fine, you're gonna get over your fear of heights, just sit in your room and meditate for a while. Just avoid it completely. You're gonna be like, oh, I think I need a new doctor. That doesn't really make sense because you probably know that that's not how you get over your fear of heights, right? So do you avoid them? No. Or do you gradually begin to expose yourself to heights? Probably. But how do I do that? So let's talk about that. So avoiding heights might make sense at some point. Look, if you were just out with your friends like a couple of days before and you were at this really high cliff and someone like went up behind you and like grabbed you and you thought you were going to fall over and then you threw up, right? That's like a really traumatizing experience. So maybe for a couple of weeks, you just want to step back and avoid heights. But like at some point, maybe that makes sense. But long-term, it's really not how you're going to overcome that fear. So the real solution to overcoming your fear of heights is to actually walk up to the cliff and look over the edge. Now, again, you want to do this slowly. So you have time and you have exposure. So you have this fear of heights, and over time, right, you gradually want to build yourself up so that you're no longer fearful. You habituate yourself to that thing, which was once perceived to be threatening. In this case, heights. In the case of dealing with pain, pain. So for example, you might start by just sitting in your room, or maybe you're on YouTube, right? And looking at some pictures. Maybe you're on the toilet and you're just looking at the Nat Geo and there's this beautiful mountain, but if you have fear of heights, this might be kind of scary. In fact, I would look at it and I imagine myself standing on top and I'm kind of like, whoa, maybe my belly starts to go a little funky, something like that. So that's like an entry point to getting over your fear of heights. And then maybe what you do next is you're like, all right, that picture is no longer scary. Then what you're doing is you're sitting on the toilet. I don't know why I'm thinking about sitting on the toilet, but you're sitting on the toilet, okay? And you're on YouTube. And you're like, I want to get over my fear of heights. Pictures aren't doing it. And I've kind of gotten good at that. I'm no longer afraid of that. But now what I want to do is I want to go look at those GoPro videos. Man, those things are kind of freaky. But I'm not actually going to the cliff yet. But it gives me the experience and it gives me the physical sensations of like that lump in my throat and a little bit of the fear. So here's what I'm going to go watch one of these videos until I feel a little bit of sensations and I'm going to shut it off. I'm going to go back to avoidance. And then the next time I go to the bathroom or whatever, I'm going to watch a little bit longer, right? And my goal is that I'm going to watch this 10-minute and 2 video and then this 2-minute 39 video, and I am going to be okay with that and get over my fear. Great. You're getting closer to overcoming it. And then I'm an archery hunter, so I like to go deer hunting. And honestly, I don't really shoot many deer. It's just I sit there and it's peaceful and people leave me alone. I do not bring a pillow out in the woods because that smells and deer might notice that and the chips and all that. But anyway, you're pretty high up in a tree, maybe like 18 feet, 16 feet, 20 feet, however high you want to go. I don't go no higher than that because I have a little bit of fear of heights. And I notice that when I go here. But the next thing you could do is you looked at the picture, you're good. Then you could go and you could go on YouTube and like watch those videos. You're like, I'm good. And then the next thing is you could make it a little bit more kind of real by climbing up and sitting in a tree if you want it. All right. So there's many ways to go about doing this, but you might start to actually get those real life sensations like, whoa, now I'm like, this is the real deal. And then once you get good at that, then you start to climb a ladder. And how many people are watching this like, ooh, I don't know if I'd do that. I'd be okay with this, but like a little bit of me might be up there like, I don't know if I want to be up here too long, right? That idea. All right. And then finally, once you're good at that, maybe a little bit too big of a jump there, right? But you might be able to do something like this and you're no longer afraid of heights, right? So you can see it, there's this graded exposure approach to getting over your fear of heights, right? So you have the picture and then you have like a little bit more lifelike, like this video of like, whoa, it's crazy. And then you go and you are sitting in the tree and then you're on this tall ladder and then you're like on this big mountain or cliff somewhere. I don't know, in Ireland or wherever the Loch Ness Monster is. Okay. Scotland, something like that. Cool. Okay, but here's the thing. That was a very kind of gradual approach, you could argue, right? But what if I just like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, cool. Like looking at these pictures. All right, I think I can do it. I'm not afraid of heights. Like, hoo-ha-ha, right? And then you go and then you climb to the top of this mountain, you close your eyes and somebody takes a blindfold off you. Like, do you think you'll be prepared for that? I would say that's a bad idea. Now, look, I'm not the doctor who helps people get over the fear of heights, okay? I help people get over the fear of pain and just pain in general. So, but still, principles, right? Apply the principle. This would cause retraumatization. This is what we would call it. This would freak you the heck out. And then you'd have to go to full-on avoidance, and avoidance completely might make sense. You might have to lay up, close your eyes, like rest in your bed and like not look at anything, right? Don't even look over your deck because it's just gonna be too scary at that point, all right? So this is what we'd call a setback. So remember, when you come up to any type of pain or activity, or in this case, fear of heights or whatever, right? Like you can either have a setback, kind of a threatening, dangerous experience, or you can have a safe experience. So in the case of this, right, it would probably cause a setback and it would not help you get over your fear of heights. It would reinforce the heights are bad. So that was scary. That was bad. Let's not do that again. Versus like, hey, that wasn't too bad. So the graded exposure approach to getting over pain and getting back to life is very important. You have to know when to apply these concepts. And if you rush it, you will re-traumatize yourself, which is okay. Take some time off and go back at it again. There is no such thing as failure. There's only feedback, folks. Okay, so don't quit. You will get there. So the process is similar when trying to resolve pain. We've already touched on this a little bit, but here's a summary of what you've learned so far. All right, so we'll wrap this up in a moment. So avoidance of pain when symptoms are really high is useful and necessary to not re-traumatize your brain or body and cause a setback or flare you up, basically. So if the problem is structural, like we talked about with Ivan, very clear mechanism. When I do this, ow, right? Symptoms are very high. It hurts all the time. Like, you know, there's a lot of certainty there that something very clearly happened. Then pushing through the pain can nick the scab and just continue to piss it off, basically. On the brain side of things, pushing through pain reinforces that movement equals danger. And at some point, this might be okay, but long-term, it becomes bad. So as the pain you experience becomes more tolerable, regardless of the cause, continuing to rest or avoid activities just reinforces your pain as something which is dangerous And the activity which you're avoiding is something that's dangerous and should continue to be avoided. So this actually keeps you from healing at some point because you never get over the fear of your pain. You never acclimate your body and your brain to that thing which you're trying to get back to. And this is a mistake I commonly see made when people try to get out of pain. It's sort of like going from the picture in the Nat Geo when you're on the toilet to, you know, the cliff of the Loch Ness Monster. All right, it's too much too fast. So it's a training error, and this is what happens. So you know, you're doing something. I'll use the example of running, but it could be anything. So something happens, it hurts. So you rest or avoid things. And after time, again, like we talked about, within say a 4 to 6 month period, naturally the body heals and you feel better. So you're like, hey doc, I don't need you, I'm good. So you jump back. The word is like you jump, see that? Back to living life and doing activity. And guess what? The pain returns and the cycle repeats itself and you get stuck in the roller coaster of pain. Like, see, this thing doesn't work. Like, I still have this problem. I need to go get surgery now. No, you did too much too fast. So here's what happened. You had exposure to something, probably something physical, right? It could be maybe you drove in the car for 20 hours or you lifted a bunch of stuff, you moved a bunch of rocks, whatever it is. In this case, you're running, you had this pain experience, right? And then you're like, screw it, all or none type of person, right? I'm just going to rest and foam roll because that's what everyone says to do, right? And then over time, you're like, oh, I'm feeling pretty good. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to go back to running. And then you're like, oh, no, went back too fast, hurts. And you have like this crash and burn cycle. And then you start to associate running with pain, or it could be really anything, movements, positions, whatever, something with pain. And again, it reinforces this. Hey, when I do this thing in my body, hey, you should kind of be afraid or worried or concerned or fearful of doing that thing, right? So do it less. And then, yep, you're right. That's a bad thing. Don't be confident. Avoid it. The more you avoid something, the less familiar it becomes. Ooh, okay, definitely can't do that still. And it cycles out of control. So again, if you get back to living life too quickly, if you have an activity, you do it, and then you just like rest completely. You're just like, okay, cool, I'm just gonna do some like basic stuff, but like pretty much I'm not gonna run or whatever it is. And then like, oh, I think I'm good. That means I'm all good and I can just go back to it. No, you have to build up your tolerance, because if you go back to it too quickly, you will cause a setback. And that's not what you want. So here's what works best. So avoidance when needed, red light, yellow light, green light. Red light, yeah, absolutely. But graded exposure when able. When the light simmers down from red and it goes orange and it goes into yellow, then you want to start doing things gradually. All right. So for example, if running was something that's yucky and you were a little bit fearful of like, ooh, that's when I hurt my knee or my back or my leg or my butt cheek, whatever it is, then you have some type of fear, pain, worry, concern, whatever to start out. So rather than completely avoiding stuff, why don't you say, what is running kind of made of? Well, running is kind of this thing where I'm on my feet and I have to be able to tolerate some jumping and whatever. So like, what are those individual components? Let's break down running and figure out how I can still stay active, and maybe relative rest. I can still rest and not go directly at that thing which is threatening, running, but maybe I can cross train and do some cycling. And then running, I kind of need to be able to like hop on one leg. So maybe I can start some type of jump roping in place. And then maybe I can start some type of like walking program, right? And then maybe I can work to a walk run and then completely to a run. So notice how this is like a graded approach over time. And this over time might be 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. It's hard to say, depends on what's going on, but that's the idea, is you slowly kind of phase into it. So remember, red light, this is the filter you'd use if you're doing activities. This red light, yellow light, green light. Should I avoid this or should I not? Red light, moderate, high pain. Yes, you're going to avoid it. Rest, relative rest. Yellow light, mild, moderate pain. It's kind of on and then it's off. I feel like this is cool. It's not doing any damage. Great. Pretty safe. Graded exposure. Stay where you're at until you get good at it, and then ratchet it up a little bit, and then ratchet up a little bit, right? Until you get closer to your goal. Green light, no pain, full exposure, you're good to go. So to finally kind of like just fully summarize this, it's like, how do you know where to begin and how to go about getting back to normal in a way that doesn't flare things up? So let's close with this. Good question. A super simple answer is kind of just what we talked about. You could just gradually begin doing things you used to do with a new knowledge you've gained, like we showed you previously, right? This idea of graded exposure and just building things up. But here are some tips based off my experience. I think this might be useful for people, so I want to share it. There's like this litmus test that I would suggest that maybe you use. So you want to ask yourself this question. This kind of helps you get in your head. And so what you want to ask yourself is, do I think I could do whatever activity it is for an hour, a half an hour, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 hours, whatever it is. Okay. So do I think, let's break this down. Do I think I could go running for an hour? Maybe you can put it in distance form too, whatever. Start with something, right? And then slowly work it down, titrate it. Do I think I could go running for an hour? How about half an hour? 15 minutes? Do I think I could sit for an hour? Half an hour? 15 minutes? Do I think I could walk? Do I think I could jump rope? Do I think I could swim? Whatever. You could put whatever you want in there. But ask yourself that question, and it's really useful, and here's why. So by asking yourself this, you'll notice a couple things will happen. Number one, you'll somehow know or get a gut feeling of whether or not you feel that level of activity would be well tolerated or not. So this is the predictive story your brain tells you about how safe it feels while doing this activity. So how do I know it's a story? Because you haven't actually done the activity at this point. So regardless of if your body is ready for the activity or not, your brain has sort of the first say, and it's already decided. Neat, right? So if you ask yourself, do you think you could run? You've got this pain in the butt. Do you think you could run for an hour? Immediately, even maybe just saying it, right? And you inserting your own activity, you probably maybe cringed a little bit. Like inside, you were like, ooh, I don't know about that, man. That doesn't sound too good. That could be bad. Okay, great. So you didn't even do it yet. You don't even know. And it's been a while since you've done it. But your brain is already making assumptions and already creating stories about whether or not that feels safe or not. And remember, motion needs to feel just as safe to the body as it does to the brain. The brain is actually, right, because pain can be experienced with or without physical damage, the brain is sort of what decides, hey, and gives the context for, is this thing a threat or is it not? So it's got to pass the brain first. It's got to get through this test. How about half an hour? Do you think you can go running for half an hour? I don't know. How about 15 minutes? Okay. Still a little bit. How about 10 minutes? Yeah, 10. Totally cool. I could do 10 minutes. Great. You would start there. Do you think you could sit? Let's try this on with something else for an hour. Heck no. How about half an hour? Maybe I might pay for it later. 15 minutes. Yep. 15 minutes. Great. Okay. Start there. Right. And that's where you'd start. You go there for 15 minutes and you check out. Safe corrective experience. And then all you need is you need reps. You need time under the bar. You need time on the seat. You need time on the saddle. You need time doing that thing, that safe thing over and over and over and over and over again. Sitting for 15 minutes. I was good. Wasn't too bad. Safe corrective experience. Sitting for 15 minutes. Wasn't too bad. 15 minutes. Wasn't too bad. Wasn't too bad. Wasn't too bad. Wow, it's getting easier. It's getting easier. And you start to get confidence. Positive experiences with the body. So now instead of running or sitting or driving or bending or lifting and being like, ow, that hurts so bad, negative input, you're now saying it wasn't too bad. And what does that do? It tells your brain, oh, wow, I could actually maybe get back to that. I don't have to be as afraid of that. That didn't really hurt. Great. And then you do it more. And the more you do it, the more confident you get, the more you move your body, boom, 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 boom. Before you know it, you're on your path to healing. All right. So ask yourself this question. It's a very powerful question to kind of let you into your brain. And it lets you see, hey, what's my brain going to allow me to get away with? What does my brain perceive as a relative threat versus that which is safe? And start there. So again, you'll get an idea of can you do it or can you not? And start at that point where you feel safe. And you'll also be able to settle on an acceptable level of activity, right? And this is just given your gut or your intuition, right? So start at that point. Listen to your sort of initial response there. That's where you want to begin so that it's completely safe in the brain and then test it out with the body. So you want to ask yourself that question. And again, stop when you reach that amount of time or intensity where you begin to say, yep, I think I could do that. And the answer to this question helps you start small and stay safe. That is the key word. Remember, we want to switch you from danger mode to safety mode and set you up for a corrective experience rather than a setback. So I probably rehash that multiple times, but I think it's useful to just hear that over and over again so you get the concept. You want to have a safe corrective experience rather than a setback. And finally, to answer the initial question of should I just rest and let things heal? I know we redefine that, but really at the end of the day, look, it's like, as always, it depends on where you are in the stages of healing and what's going on. But as a general rule of thumb, stay as active as possible and use relative rest. Use that stoplight analogy as sort of a filter. Use relative rest when needed with the goal of gradually building up tolerance to activity over time. Calm things down. As symptoms go down, build things back up. That's it. Okay. And obviously you can see we've gone really in depth here, probably more in depth than anybody else has that you've watched, but I think it's useful still to understand the little nuances of not only how this idea of avoidance, if we redefine rest as avoidance, how avoidance affects the body and deconditions things, but then also, right, how it can impact your brain, and recognizing that the brain or the mind is also something very powerful and something to be sort of looked into, if you will, when it comes to getting back to life, and how those fears and concerns and worries and the reinforcement, which occurs when avoiding things for too long, can actually keep you from healing. All right, so that's all I've got. Again, the purpose of this video, right, was not to kind of help you decide, do I have piriformis syndrome? Do I have sciatica? But this is the process of sort of jumping from avoidance to exposure and getting back to life. And if you're interested in trying to figure out like what the heck's going on, again, download my DIY guide. Just flashed up a couple screenshots here to kind of show you like the algorithm, the flow chart that you would get access to. And again, this is my brain sort of on steroids and just all laid out in digital format so you can follow things and figure out what could be going on. So if you found this useful, please comment and or like below, and we will see you in the next video. Thanks.